Carnosaur. Jeff, how you doing, sir?
Good. Can you see me? Am I here? Am I, something? I've got you sideways, but I'm right side up. So which way am I to
You
you?
know, you are turned to the side,
Yeah,
but you know
no,
what? If that's good for you, I
well,
can edit it in post and
I could probably just do this with my, I can probably do something with this thing. It's like, this is like
yeah.
the worst, cheapest tripod that I ever could have bought for myself. But you know something? What the heck?
Yeah.
It somehow works from time to time. And
There you go.
if I jigger this a little bit, I can never figure this stupid thing out. So I put it this way, and then I flip over the phone itself, and then
There we
maybe I can
go.
But something. This is sort of a good metaphor for life in general. Um,
Just figuring it
especially.
out.
Yeah, figuring it out. Everything's on its side these days, and we are sort of like just getting by.
Just trying to get right side up, huh?
That's yeah, exactly. We're just trying to get our bearings, get ourselves on our feet. Now, if my phone stays where it is and doesn't just fall out, then I might actually be.
We're
I
good.
was hoping to get a little bit of I was hoping to get a little bit of a wider view,
There we go.
but I
Hey, we
but
got some art in the back. Okay.
yeah,
Woo.
that is the piece that I did for that's the piece I did for where it is. Let me get it out of the way. Maybe you can see it. It's the piece I did for I didn't do it for Scary Monsters magazine, but it
Okay.
ended up on the back cover of was it issue 137, I think. Their Christmas themed issue. So
Okay.
yeah, so it was cool. It was cool that they put it up, and now I feel like I actually did something with my life.
There you go. I mean, when somebody scours through your IMDb or just your credentials in general, obviously you've done tons with your life, and it was hard to not make this a 5-hour conversation. But with your time in mind, I tried to do what I could to dwindle
Well,
down and kind of touch on some topics here. That I have kind of taken from other interviews and things from the past, as well as your fine art too. So, I guess even starting, with your work helping materialize dreams and nightmares alike, for films that we all love. What are 3 scenes or sequences in film that are forever ingrained in your brain? And maybe it's something that was shocking, scary, disgusting. What comes to mind for you?
well, you know, when I saw that question, I thought, boy, there's just, where do you start? I mean, there's so many. I mean, I've been watching stuff for so many years now that I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question completely. But I think that I'd say that like one scene that really shocked me was when I saw Equinox when I was 8 years old, and suddenly there's this giant squid in the middle of a forest tearing down a cabin, and it seems so odd because you don't really think of that being a forest dwelling creature, and yet somehow it was odd. It was really, really just completely disarming, and my 8-year-old brain was blown away,
Hmm.
and I thought, wow, this is something that I really have to explore a little bit more. Let me see if I can get my light a little bit better set up so it's not blinding me, but also but at least I like low key lighting in the day. It's because it gets so bright in here.
Sure,
So
sure.
yeah, so I try to keep it low key. But
Okay.
another scene I would say that would be you know um, I would say something like say maybe this is where it gets off track. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm, okay.
With that, with the end, the third act
Hmm.
shootout. Between Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, and Eli Wallach. It's such an outstandingly timed and designed sequence that it really just, it captures me. And it was a film that I just never really, you know, got too much into when I was a kid. I saw it in the theater with my dad, and I was bored to tears. And then years later, I am in Italy, and I meet the makeup artist, Reno
Oh
Carboni
wow.
from who did those films, and I didn't even know at the time that I met him. It wasn't until I got back to LA and I saw his name on the credits, and I sat there and, yeah, I can't believe it. There it was. It was like, but you that, I mean, that, or I could pick any one of those films, like sequences from any one of those films. Another one, I mean, something very more simple, but I thought was really incredibly effective was, and it's another spaghetti western, was Django Bastardo, or The Stranger's Gun Down, which the very first shot of Anthony Steffen's character is a god shot, like directly above him, following him as he's walking, and it's just this really eerie, very silent, almost silent, except you just hear his footsteps, but it sets up the entire film, which is another one of my favorite films. So it's so it really kind of set things up for me the first time I saw it. So,
and I mean the blocking, the action sequences, and especially for the time. I mean, pulling off some of the stunts and pulling off some of the stuff that they did. Those movies were, I mean, they're classics for a reason, even still today.
Oh, sure. And I mean, I didn't pay any attention until after I went to Italy, and then after I'd worked with a bunch of the crews, that it was really, I started really seeing just how well versed they were at pretty much everything they did. I mean, they get a little cheesy at times too, but the truth is, it was well done cheese. It was actually well aged cheese.
Sure.
So.
Sure. I mean, and touching on, you mentioned the Equinox, and having that experience of this monster out in the woods, and you working in practical effects. What have been some of your favorite pull-offs as far as monsters in movies? I was intrigued by this, just by all of the work that you've done and all of the great things that you've done.
Well, it's sort of a practical effect. I mean, I really got in. I wasn't really, I mean, in terms of it wasn't makeup that really inspired me. It was more, it was stop motion. It was Ray Harryhausen and, I mean, of course, Willis O'Brien and other guys that I got to know, like Jim Danforth and Dave Allen, who really, so creature wise, I mean, I start veering into the stop motion territory because it was just so much more of a versatile technique. But I mean, I love my Godzilla films too. I think those are, but like I said, these become so difficult to answer in an honest way, because you'll say something, and if after the interview I'll go, I didn't even think about that one. It's like, but I just keep it kind of general when it comes down to, I mean, of course, Seventh Voyage, Cyclops, and King Kong, of course. That's another great one. So it really kind of runs the gamut, but and I think about the work that's being done today, which is offshoots of everything that was done before, and the work just, I mean, somehow the work is just better than ever, but I'm finding less of a connection with it because it feels so mundane, with Ray Harryhausen stating that once it becomes too realistic, it just falls into the category of mundane, and I agree with that. It's like I want my creatures to be creaturey and not not living animals that we see every single day. So like I said, that's sort of a broader generalization of your question. It's so hard to be. Like I said, anything Harryhausen, anything. Ag Super. Anything like that. I can just say that's what gets me. So.
I mean, and you mentioned even, once again, kind of touching on with the Equinox, that whole aspect of something out of its element, and thinking of the original, Godzilla versus King Kong, and that octopus coming on land, and it was like me being a little kid seeing this, I'm like, they can do that? That's just a fear that I hadn't known that I needed to have, It's like,
sure. I mean, I saw Dave Allen with Taurus. He and Dennis Mirren both did an interview the morning Equinox was released here in Los Angeles. It was only aired in LA, and it was our local ABC affiliate, Channel 7, and their morning news program. There's Dave Allen and Dennis Mirren both, and Dave has the stop motion model of Taurus, and he's showing
wow.
this is after they just showed the sequence of Taurus chasing the old man in the forest.
Okay.
And then it cuts to Dave, and he's describing the principles of stop motion with holding the model. That's what got me. It was more I want one of those, and it's a little too much to pull out now, but I made one for myself eventually. So
Man.
I mean I'll indulge myself. She's right behind me. I keep them in a bag to keep them safe in here, but it's
Oh.
and he's he's a fully ball and socketed version. So he does everything the original did. So.
Man, oh man.
So this was something, I indulged myself with that. So
Wow. And
yeah.
I mean, that's such a cool, talent, even to become working in film, but then also seeing something. It's like, I kind of want one of those for myself. That'd
Yeah.
be cool to have on the show.
Well, I figured it's sort of like, I mean, if you can do this stuff professionally, I mean, you can still do it for yourself and have some fun.
Sure.
Because that way, I mean, it took me a year to make that because it was I did it over the pandemic, and I and I had the time. So I was working on Abruptio at the time, and but anytime I would have off, I'd work on this guy, so yeah.
Man, that is incredible.
I have a laser blast alien also. So
Oh man.
I have a stop motion laser blast, and that's actually cast off of one of the originals. So yeah. So
I mean, were you big into like sculpting or like models when you were a kid, as far as building things like that?
I mean, I love model kits. I mean, I had all of the Aurora model kits. One thing I never did is I never painted them. I just left them as they were. I never even got into that aspect till much later, and I figured just having the figures in front of me was inspiring enough. Because I remember the original long box Godzilla with the fuchsia plastic, and it was like, and that was really striking considering you never thought of them in that color. But that's how I kept them. I just kept the model like that. Now I got rid of it eventually, and now I kick myself because I think it's worth so much money.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, and once again, just having the talent to be able to create something like that and have that, on hand. Does anything come to mind as far as projects that you've worked on that you kind of kicked yourself on not being able to keep a prop or a piece from, said movie?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I mean, when you're trying to pay for space and the jobs are slow and they're coming in one at a time, and I spent years, keeping various shops open. And so eventually you kind of go, well, rent's coming up and I got to pay it. And so you pull a prop off the shelf and dust it off and sell it. I mean, I think about some of the Puppet Master props and things like that I really would like to have kept. I mean, I still have a few things. Luckily I made some for my fiance early on, and now they sit in her parents' house in North Carolina safely away from everyone. So, because I mean, I need some display stuff, eventually, because it's sort of, that's what people like to see. They like to see eye candy. And the most disappointing thing is to walk into somebody's shop and you go, well, I got nothing.
Wow.
So, but yeah, I mean, I've got a few things left over, but I don't really have, I mean, there's some of the cooler stuff like my Killer Shrew, from Return of the Killer Shrews and things like that. But they eventually end up, but something, they end up with collectors, and in a lot of ways they value it more than we do. Because for us, I mean, it does memories, and it is, like I said, eye candy, but in a lot of ways, when somebody else has it, it becomes more precious to them. It's a pressure maybe, hopefully it's appreciable.
Mhm.
But eventually, I mean, it's something that, will inspire them too, hopefully. So yeah, so I
Oh.
mean, it's bittersweet, but it's worth it in the end to let somebody else be happy. So
Oh,
yeah.
sure. And that's the thing too, where it's like I try to consolidate and not have too much, but there's certain things where I'm just like, oh man, having this, I can't seem to get rid of it, or paintings, or just little props and things too. So, I mean, as far as your interest into breaking into, working on film, how does that come about?
Uh, that came about because I saw King Kong on TV when I must have been 5 years old or something, and
Awesome.
my grandmother had put it on, and I sat there just floored. I didn't know what I was seeing, and but again, I got interested in that sort of thing, and I didn't know why I was interested. My brother bought an Aurora Frankenstein kit, and that's something else that I saw because I
Oh,
saw the movie, and I was like, I could put those two together. But I it was Equinox when Dave Allen was on TV and he was explaining stop motion, and I'd already seen Seventh Voyage of Sinbad on TV when by that time
okay.
King Kong, so something looked different about stop motion, and it was Dave explaining it, and I went, that's it, that's what I want to do for a living, and of course my dad rolled his eyes because he wants me to take over his sheet metal shop eventually,
Okay.
um, and you know, but I really, thought that it was something that I would be, I don't know, maybe I thought I would be good at, and luckily, I guess I was decent at it enough to be able to keep doing it for as long as I have. But I, you know, it was that moment, and then I began to find out that where I lived was all my neighbors worked in the film industry and stuff. I had a guy named Frank J. Uriosti. When we moved to Glendale from La Crescenta, my mom became friends with a woman named Gemma Uriosti, and it turned out her husband was a film editor, and he went on, he edited RoboCop, Basic
Oh,
Instinct,
sure. Okay. Yep.
Die
Hmm.
Hard, Total Recall, Conan the Destroyer. I mean, he's done a lot of big recognizable films. But when I was a kid and teenager and met him, or maybe a preteen or something when I first met him, he he just, the only thing I remember him telling me was in the 1960s when I was in the editing department at Universal, one of the films I worked on was King Kong versus Godzilla, and that blew me away. I mean, I didn't know I was even going to hear that.
Wow.
And then a number of years later, it was just a year or so after Star Wars had been released, another editor moved in about three houses down from us, a guy named Richard Chew, who was one of the
Oh, okay.
Oscar-winning
Hmm.
editors. As a matter of fact, he was apparently the guy that put the film together in its final form.
Okay.
And but yeah, he was a neighbor of ours, and I used to look after his kids when him and his wife would go out, and I used to be able to carry his Oscar around and things like that. It was just, I mean, for me, and it turned out, I mean, all my neighbors were in the industry. I had Cleavon Little lived a few blocks from us, and Vic Tayback, and I mean, just all these people. They shot Ed Hunt had shot Bloody Birthday a block below our where I lived in Glendale. He lived the
No
same block,
kidding.
but him and the producer had come by our house as on a scout and talked to my dad about it. I remember meeting Ed and the producer. I was like maybe 17 or something, and my dad thought it was a commercial they were shooting, or they're going to shoot, and they said that if we shoot here, we're going to build a fort in the backyard that you guys will be able to keep. And we always thought it was a commercial that they were talking about, and years, I mean, it was just maybe about a year or so ago, I finally, Bloody Birthday on Tubi. I always thought it was shot in Canada because that's where Ed had done most of his films, and I put the film on, I start watching it, they really cut to a location, I go, looks really familiar. I go to IMDb and I look, and it's like, that's a block below where I lived. And the kids running up the street, and they run up Idlewood Road, and they hang a left on Cumberland, and I'm going, that's one block below my house. And
Oh man.
so I had no idea that all that stuff was I had a kind of an inkling it was, but yeah, that was sort of like that was part of the childhood I grew up. I mean, I had my friends and we did our stuff and went to movies and punk shows together and things like that. That was sort of the growing up that I had in that area. But it was mostly the
Oh
film
man,
stuff
okay.
that really started to hit me. That this is all going on around me, so I guess I could do it too. So
Sure, sure. I mean, you mentioned punk, and I'm very much into that element as well. What bands were some of the bands that you remember seeing?
oh well, I mean, of course, Black Flag and
Oh, dude,
Descendants and I mean, I grew up. I mean, growing up in L.A. I mean, we were like next to OC.
Opportunity.
Yeah, and a f- one of my best friends, a guy named Dave Brandt, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, he began to do artwork for TSOL. He came up
Oh,
with their
wow.
he's the one that came up with the American flag logo that they had. This is when this is when
Okay.
well, we actually started meeting them Beneath the Shadows when Beneath the Shadows came
Okay.
out, and when Jack was still the lead singer and Greg Keane came in as the keyboardist, and
Mhm.
we got to know them about that time. And then when Joe Wood joined as the lead singer, that's when David come up with the new logo, and they adopted that for the band. We spent a few years, and I used to do makeup for those guys at a few shows,
Oh
like
my God.
the infamous SIR show
Uh-huh.
on Sunset Boulevard. There was a big riot afterwards, but yeah,
Yeah.
but Dave and I were up in the rafters, up in the green room, watching it all unfold as it
Oh
happened.
my God.
So yeah, but I mean, I was busy taking off their makeup, so
Oh no. You're like,
yeah,
well, I'll
so
take a little bit longer to do this.
no, yeah, that was wild. It was just like, I mean, yeah, but that was just sort of the
Man.
life that we lived in Glendale. So
Oh, dude, that's so amazing. And I mean, all of the
yeah,
infamous, venues that were over that way. And I mean,
oh yeah,
even Motorhead coming up and hanging out
oh,
all the time. And
I remember Godzilla's on San Fernando Road. I only went there once, but but it was like such a
oh,
cool name for a
dude.
place. Also in that world, TSOL's manager was a guy named Mike Vraney, and he was also Dead Kennedy's manager. But Mike
Okay.
was the person who founded Something Weird Video,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. Okay,
yeah,
that's. I
Mike
was gonna say
Mike
that
is
name sounds
yeah
familiar.
Mike had passed away a number of years ago
Okay.
also, but he was just one of those people that we knew and he'd get us in shows all. I mean, we got comped into so many shows
Oh,
because of that.
dude.
So yeah, so it was it was cool. It was a neat.
That is amazing.
So,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, for placement, there's like CBGBs on like the East
yeah,
Coast, but then, you're
yeah.
talking California and it's almost to try and sit and name some of the venues that are just notorious. I mean, nowadays and seeing all those bands, man, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. We had a good time.
Now,
What I remember of my youth, we had a good time. Yeah.
touche,
But
have fun. Yeah.
yeah, but I was in a band. I was in a punk band too at the time. I won't say the name, but we never even were going to get big. But I at one point had a choice between sticking with that. It's never really much of a bass player it was, but for punk it was okay. But and then I got a job on Serpent and the Rainbow, and I had to make a choice
Oh
between
man.
sticking and I made the choice of doing what I planned on doing. So,
And I mean, I guess it worked out,
well, yeah, I
huh?
mean, financially, I'd say it was a bust, but
Oh, okay.
success comes in so many different forms. I mean,
True.
the way I'll put it is I never thought I'd get this far, but I mean, I got maybe further than I thought I would in some ways, but there's things that I didn't, would love to have done, but I didn't,
Yeah.
but I'm still pleased with at least the outcome because I, didn't. I mean, at least you take some risks in life, and whether they succeed or not, that's really kind of up to you.
Yeah.
But it takes kind of a crazy mind to do makeup effects and stick with the film industry and stuff. It's somebody once put it's like being in an abusive relationship, and they're right. Yeah. So yeah.
Jeez. I mean, you taking on bass, like, what were some of your inspirations? I don't want to get too
Oh, I
far
mean,
off track, but
oh,
man, I
well,
did not know this. I love
I
this.
got guys like Chris Squires and
Mm,
oh gee, it's what was his name? Fabio Pignatelli, I believe, from
okay. Mm-hmm.
Goblin, and I mean Jaco Pastorius and things like just but but the thing is I'm never as good as any of them. So I could pick things up by ear, and I took some lessons, but eventually lessons got boring, and I just had more fun
Oh,
just doing it.
man.
And Red Cross, the Jeff and Steve from Red Cross, I think were at our very first show at the Cafe de Grand, and the drum set fell apart on stage, and they everybody let us like take the time to put it back together and start the song again. Everybody, well, we could see Jeff and Steve from Red Cross out in the crowd, like just it was that was fun. So that was a lot of fun. So,
Oh, what
but
kind of bass did you have?
oh my god, I had I had like a Rickenbacker 2001, not the
Holy man.
4001,
I think you're
which was cool.
downplaying this, Jeff.
It was cool, and
Holy
I mean,
man.
and I had a Fender P bass and a jazz bass, and then I had a couple like knockoff things. I can't even remember what the names are. I think my first one was just when I got $100 for Christmas. I looked up in the local recycler. Someone was selling a bass for $100. Called them up, and they said, "Yeah, it's still for sale. Come on over." And that's it. It was my Christmas present to myself. And then my neighbor, we took the plate off the front and put a clear, so you could see the interior and made the
Okay.
body blue, and it was just like it was kind of fun, but
Oh,
yeah, that was
man.
kind of a knockoff. But now I just play
So
around on
sick.
my phone on the GarageBand on the phone every once in a while, which is a big pain because it's not like doing this. Is you're doing this, and it's like I can't get that with my thumbs. So, but yeah,
Man, that is
yeah.
awesome. I love that. And especially that's a huge, like draw and love of mine is music and in horror movies or film, at large.
Oh,
But
oh,
man, hearing the crossovers,
well,
that's always something fun to get
you
into.
know, that's what music. Music is such a great part of movies to begin with, and I'll just divert a little bit that when I found out that Ennio Morricone was doing the soundtrack on Wolf, that for me was one of the highlights of my career was because I still believe he was the finest
Mm,
film composer we've ever had. We've never, there's a lot of great film composers, but he was more diverse than anyone. And he did more styles and played around with stuff and really created some amazing, like, very, very, very almost visual music in a
mm,
lot of ways. And he created emotion. And I heard, oh God, I can't remember who the composer was, and it was talking about this. It was an NPR interview talking about it was The Perfect Storm, I think, and there
okay.
was a composer from that talking about how he said that he didn't feel that music should create emotion in film. He said that music should create tone.
Hmm,
And I sat there and
okay.
screamed at the radio, saying, "You're an idiot." It's like tell that to an Ennio Morricone, and he'll laugh in your face. It's amazing how I think music in films these days is so underplayed and so I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Hans Zimmer, to be honest with you. I know
Oh,
everyone
okay.
loves him, but
Hmm.
I'm not a big fan of his because I don't think his music has the sweeping emotion that most music should have. I want something that grabs me
Sure.
when I'm seeing a film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if music isn't there, then the film doesn't grab me either.
And it's funny. I mean, you mentioned that too, because as far as composers wise, there's an act. I think they're out of West Coast called Disaster Piece, and they did It Follows.
Oh, okay.
Trying to think of a couple of other movies, but they were one that kind of jumped out at me as far as like, these guys or girls.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure who's in the
Yeah.
group, but they get it.
Well,
This is
I
something
like
that
that. That I like.
Hmm.
I mean, I know that it's like, and believe me, I know I'm not an island, and I know that I'm not like speaking to, truth to anyone who does. It's just
No, you
that's
make
my
a
own person.
point. No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I really speak for myself when I say this stuff, but I'm, like I said, it's like I was just watching the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad again, and Bernard
Hmm.
Herrmann's score just is so amazing that, that. And not only that, then it forced me to look up a little trivia, and then I found out the guy who plays Golar in Seventh Voyage of Sinbad was in the creature suit in Horror Express.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so yeah, so that kind of floored me too. So I expected that
Man.
creature not to go, "That's right." So, so
Oh man. I mean, and
that's what I love about film, though. I mean, well, the director of Horror Express was one of the unit directors on Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Three Worlds of Gulliver,
okay. So
Eugenio Martin. Yeah, so
couple of
again,
ties. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. See, but that for me, that's what's so fascinating. That for me, my career almost pales in comparison to everybody else's because without them, I mean, I wouldn't have a career if I wasn't inspired by so many people.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I think that's what's so important. I've met newer artists, and you ask them sort of what their inspiration is, and they say, "Well, I saw this movie,"
Mhm.
and that's a good start. But really, what drives you beyond that? I mean, when I was a kid, I knew who knew people in the 1920s were. I knew, and I'm trying to find anybody these days who knows who. Sometimes you'll ask them Dick Smith, and they'll give you a blank stare. You know, so
I I always find that it's fascinating, especially in the film and music interest, and I'm sure this is I mean, like my dad loves trains and he loves cars and different things like that, and
oh yeah,
sports, and so it diverts into different subgenres of love, but as far as talking about movies, and somebody brings up something, it's like, oh my gosh, that director did such and such,
yeah,
and if the score was this, and
yeah,
it's just it's that love for all these things, and
yeah. Well,
the behind the
I,
scenes.
it's yeah. I mean, I compiled a list of Lee Van Cleef. One of his earliest
Uh-huh.
films was The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. He kills the creature in the film.
Hmm.
I started watching some of his other films. Most of the ones shot in Europe, and you realize, oh, that actor was in a Ray Harryhausen film too, like John Philip Law in Death Rides a Horse. It's like suddenly you've got two Ray Harryhausen actors there. Aldo Sambrell or Michael Callan and Ed Lauter, both oh geez, it's like I can't remember the exact I can't remember the exact title of it, but still, yeah, something like I said, I'm a film nerd that way.
Yeah,
It's yeah,
man.
like so. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, in I could keep on going on about
Oh, I
music
know.
and
Yeah, I know.
scores and different things like that.
We're diverting off of the stuff
I
that we were planning on
I
talking about
well, this
completely.
is this is this is fun. Like I say, I obviously want to keep your time in mind, but I'm like, oh man, I have to touch on this a minute because
Yeah,
I'm a huge music lover too.
I've got foam latex to run, but I'm gonna wait till do that till tomorrow, anyways. So
Okay.
I've still got like a week and a half before I shoot this short film.
Okay.
A guy named a guy I met named Gerald Wallace. He's got a short film, Mr. Fizzy, that he's shooting, and doing a couple of gore makeups for it.
Oh
So
man,
yeah, so
awesome.
I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning it, but I'm not going to tell any more than that. So,
Yeah, sure, sure.
so,
Okay.
yeah,
Now, I
so.
mean, as far as your pieces and your work, just a couple of things as far as what comes to mind as your longest shoot, in building. I know you
Oh,
mentioned like Evil Bong 2 and different, aspects there, but
well,
something that you've worked, the longest and was tiresome for.
well, I mean, when I did Abruptio, that was 5 non-consecutive years. That's probably the longest thing I've ever done. And then when I did the final stretch of Abruptio, that was 15 months. So
Oh wow.
and that was over the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
It was like literally just before the pandemic started, and then towards the beginning of 2021. So,
Yeah.
and I thought, let's put it this way: that made my 12 weeks without a day off when I did, boy, Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning, Return
Okay.
of the Killer Shrews, Nixon's the One. I did a short film called The Root of All Evil. It was like, and another, like, I did like 8 projects over a 12-week period, and I didn't have one day off during that 3 months,
Mm.
and I was just killed it by the end of it. As a matter of fact, I had something else pop up. Somebody wanted me to come in and sculpt something for them, and by that time I had already booked a flight to the East Coast. I said, I'm just getting away for a week. I said, I'm going somewhere I've never been before. I'm just going to go somewhere and just be myself and not be, in the industry at all. So,
Sure, sure.
yeah, so
And traveling makes a nice little solace for you as far as,
yeah,
escaping
when
and getting away.
when I can afford it, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, of course,
I
of
mean,
course.
so, but, I mean, let's put it this way: they were so cheap on the Universal Soldier film. When I got my final paycheck, so they didn't pay me a dime until I got the end. That's when I held out the last shipment and said, "Send me the check before I send this out. You're not getting this until I get my
Oh
check."
man.
And but yeah, and it was like, and I looked and I said, "Well, this is what I made per week." I went, "Well, at least it's all in one lump payment, not over spread out, because that would have been nothing." But um, and then worse than that, I went out to Louisiana and worked with the same people later that year, and they, I mean, they're nice people, but to be honest with you, it's like I'm not impressed.
Yeah,
It's like,
business aspect.
yeah, something. I mean, don't tell me that you don't have the money to do things when you guys are like double dipping and owning the company owner owned all of the equipment and would rent it back to the productions, so he was double dipping on everything, making money off of his own productions. And then
Oh man.
we found out that the production company never put their half of the money in the film, and so we were shooting it all with what the Sci-Fi Channel gave us, and it actually turned out to be one of the better films that they put out. But
Yeah, totally.
as if you kind of get the joke, we we everything that they wanted us to do, we did the opposite. so so it, so yeah, so it was but something like, they were angry at us, but what the heck, it's like, listen, I mean, you guys
Oh
put us in a
man.
terrible situation, and then, not on top of that, they stole something that I made and put it on the cover of one of their DVDs, and never paid me for
Oh.
it. Never even It wasn't even something they were supposed to use. It was something for as a pitch for a show, and then they ended up putting it on the box of the monkey's paw cover, and
Oh
that was
yeah.
something I made as a pitch, and they just grabbed it off the table and took photos of it and stuck it on the DVD box, and there it is. There's my work. And so
Damn.
therefore, it's like, why should I work with any? I don't even know. Are they still around? Sci-fi still around?
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
even.
I still see it as a channel. I don't know as far as like sci-fi originals or movies that
Oh
that
yeah.
they're putting out
Well,
nowadays, but
well.
hit or miss. There's definitely
They
some.
Yeah, well, they sort of shot themselves in the foot every single time, pretty much.
Mm,
It's like,
mm,
people don't, their audiences are smarter than they think they were. I mean, that was the problem. These are people who really thought that they were smarter than their audience, and the
mm,
truth is, the audiences were a lot smarter than they were.
mhm,
So,
mm.
you know.
What would you say as far as the largest piece? I mean, Abruptio, this is something that you had multiple sculpts and you had to have
Mhm.
full puppets and but as far as do you have anything that had to have been 10 feet that was, I mean, Carnosaur kind of comes to mind, but what do you have there?
Well, I would think that would be more than working in conjunction with like working over at Optic Nurse Studios, on Buffy the Vampire Slayer stuff going in, and
Ah, okay.
they, I actually, I'd finished Babylon 5, and so I wasn't working there full time, but John Bullich would pull me back in on various shows, and they needed this gigantic creature suit sculpted, and it has to be done in toot sweet. I mean, it was just like days this thing had to be done. And Norman Cabrera was there, and a bunch of other people. And we're all just sitting there hacking away at in the clay on this thing and getting this thing ready I mean, it was wild to watch. I mean, thing comes together in days that you take weeks or months to do. So I mean, that thing was huge too. It was maybe at least 10 feet tall,
Okay.
maybe in the end when it was finished. And so yeah, I try to avoid those myself in some ways because sometimes when I did Abruptio, it was just me. I mean, my fiance helped me a little bit. She helped trim some stuff for me and do a little bit, but pretty much everything on Abruptio that I did, because I did most of the puppets for the film, but I know Mark Villalobos made the original Les puppet, and then I did some
Oh,
recreation. I did a recreation of it because they needed more than one. They used it so much they needed more than one puppet, and I made a lighter weight version and made a mask also for Evan's wife Carrie to wear for shots.
okay.
And so yeah, so I mean, really, when it comes down to it, I'm just a one man team most of the time doing this stuff, and so anything too large, I try to avoid with that.
Sure.
I built a couple of oversized creature arms though for Garo Setian's film. What was it Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star that came out
Okay.
just about a couple of years ago, I think now,
Okay.
and that was a lot of fun because those are just some big foam construction creature arms. He had a design that he had already purchased. They were just going to do the creature. I was going to build puppets of them. I would have been in a car accident just before that. My fiance and I, and we were.
Oh, you
I
actually,
was.
I'm sorry.
I
Laugh.
did well. No, you can laugh all you want because it really was like we survived it, and that's the important thing. But the guy T-boned us and hit Maggie directly, but luckily we got out of it.
Oh,
Okay, so
man. Okay.
but I did that show. Well, I did that show with a partial concussion, so I'm surprised. I won an award for that show also, which was
Oh, my.
kind of floored me. I was like, I mean, I don't know how I won an award for when I went practically didn't know what I was doing, but I built a couple of oversized creature arms for that, and that was a lot of fun building
Oh,
those,
man.
and because they were so simple, and the designs were pretty easily translatable, and I did another puppet for the film also, but those arms are cool because I never really get a chance to do cool stuff like that. So when I do that, I try to, yeah, I mean, I can't do as much as I'd like to, but they were fun. They're big cable controlled things that they could, get shots of, and
Yeah.
with the
Dang.
actors, and then yeah, so they didn't have to rely on CG for everything,
Okay.
but the one thing I told them, I said, listen, just be careful because they will break if you don't treat them right.
Handle them right.
So
Oh, okay.
I can't make them bulletproof.
Right,
So
right. No, I thought you were saying, just to kind of, recap, I thought you were saying something about, I would have rather been in a car accident than taking on this big project. I didn't
well,
realize that you were actually in an accident. I
I
apologize.
well, no, that's okay, and I there, believe me, that statement is very true. it's it's very, something, but I don't blame anybody though. Sometimes I just blame myself for it, but I don't blame anybody because most of the time, and people are really, really good, and and the people we're working with they're great people, but just sometimes nerves get frayed because I mean, wow, we need to inject money into anything, and it's a little money, and it becomes like tighter. Money looks great on paper, and the moment you get it, and you go, now I gotta buy this, it just shrinks down. I mean, when I
Hmm.
did Wing Commander 4, I went through 10 grand in a week, and I sat there just like scratching my head, going, I never went
What now?
through that much in my life.
Yeah.
It's like, and I wish it wasn't even my money.
Yeah.
I was giving it to everybody else. So,
Damn.
yeah, so.
Oh my goodness. I mean, so we kind of have touched on some of these things in some of your work as far as within film, and I just had a couple of movies that I wanted to personally ask about, and then we're
Mhm.
gonna kind of go from there with Abruptio and your work on that. But first off, just maybe just a small thing of what comes to mind. And we'll start off with this
Oh,
classic that I absolutely love and adore since I've been a kid, Kingdom of the Spiders. What comes to mind as far as working on that shoot?
well, that was sitting in a guy. There was a guy named Douglas Barrett Jones, and he's not the Doug Jones, from
That
Hellboy. And
Yeah, yeah.
Doug,
Okay.
he's a wonderful guy. But Douglas Barrett Jones, he had an issue of Famous Monsters dedicated to him, the Food of the Gods issue.
Okay.
And he was a guy that I met at Forey Ackerman's the night that Forey invited me over to meet Ray Harryhausen about 6 months before Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger was released. And this was on New Year's Eve, and there was this other guy there, and we started talking, and it turns out that he lived in Glendale also, and he had worked at Don Post Studios, and he's currently working he'd been working also at the Berman Studios on like shows like Empire of the Ants and stuff like that.
Okay.
And
Yep.
but he was building things for Steve Neal, building appliances and prosthetics and things like that for him, spider bites essentially. And but they had all of these background spiders. There were these cast urethane, probably. I remember them being gray, but they were tarantulas, and I thought there was about 300. I was told there was about 500, but myself and a guy named Skip Torvinen, he's a prop guy now. He's a prop master on I can't remember the show. He's on a real popular show right now, and another guy, Mike Schulte, and the three of us came in and spent about maybe a week or two just every night with the Dremel and just in there dremeling the seams off of spiders and throwing in a box and doing the next one, throwing them in a box. And I mean, that was it. That was, I mean, a rather mundane but sort of important first step. I mean, we weren't paid for it. I did remember meeting V Neal really briefly.
Okay. Okay.
Because she came over to pick up some things one night. But it was, like I said, an ignominious beginning to an ignominious career. But it was cool. I mean, listen, it's like, I mean, here we were. I mean, I saw the movie in the theater, and I thought, waiting for my credit to roll, and it was like nothing, and I was confused by that, but
Yeah.
it took me years to figure out that not everybody gets a credit, when they're working on a film. So films are, by and large, I mean, they're done by people that never even know who they were, and they deserve, I guess, they deserve some credit also, because I mean, it wouldn't have got done without them.
A lot of hands at play. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on that just because, like I say, from being a little kid and seeing that movie, that was one of those things where it was just, you're already kind of scared of spiders, but then it's like, holy shit, my whole town is going to be, could be filled with these things. Like, my Lord.
I did a Sci-Fi Channel show with Bill.
Okay.
It was a full moon fright night with Charlie Band directing it. It was 13 of the full moon films with William Shatner hosting them, and Chris Bergschneider and Bud McGrew and I had done the show, and Chris was playing the bartender, so he's in the animatronic head. Bud is the puppeteer, and he's got sort of a system. He's got a single person system, so he can control all of the movements of the head himself. And I left me to do everything else, run around, do all the little bits and makeups and this. And I was reading all the off-screen dialogue with Bill also. And but the first thing, our first day, and I'm putting some vampire bites, or I'm doing some vampire makeup or something on Bill. And I tell him, and we'd already met him at his office, and I tell him, so now that we're officially working together, I think it's safe to say the first film that I worked on was Kingdom of the Spiders. And he just looks at me, smiles, and goes, "Really?" And that was a great day. I mean, he was awesome. I mean, what an amazing guy to work with. He was just the most
Awesome.
giving person I've ever worked with. One of the most giving.
Man,
So
man, oh man.
so
And to be able to meet, these people and have them be cool also, like,
yeah.
what a high five.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
love that.
yeah. He and Malcolm McDowell both. I mean, they're just
Oh man.
amazing people. So,
Wow.
and so
Good.
many others. I can't name a list, but
Sure,
it's
sure.
yeah.
Next up here, I had this is an '80s favorite of mine and a recent favorite of mine. What can you tell us about Scanner Cop 2? Man,
Wow.
oh man.
That John Beekler had the show, and they were already working on it, but he called me one day, and I really only did one thing on that show.
Hmm.
Um, but he needed a makeup done for Kane Hodder. Uh,
Okay.
Kane plays a security guy, and he gets his
Yeah.
ear melted in
Yeah.
the movie,
Okay. Okay.
so so I don't even know if I didn't even do a live cast of Kane. John already had casts of him, and I went over and I did some snap molds and some smaller molds, and I did most of the work in my own garage for it.
Oh,
But I had sculpted the big side of the face piece with a separate ear and rigged it for tubing and smoke and things like that. Uh, and I went in and did the makeup on Kane, and they sat us sitting around all night, and then they wrapped us without using the makeup, and so Kane wasn't happy, but we had to go back in the
oh,
second day and do it, and got the shot off. And I didn't think the shot didn't look great in the film. I was a little disappointed because it was so rushed, and we never really got any really great shots of it,
okay.
but it was still a lot of fun working with Kane and the guys in the shop. I mean, like Rod Matsui and Dirk Von Besser and Jim Rowland and Tom Irvin and I mean, God, who else? Chris Robbins, I think, was there, and it was just like, yeah, it was a great crew, a lot of fun, people were just laughing a lot, and because I did some of my work in John's place,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, but that was really part of the whole thing. It was really just that one makeup that I did,
Okay.
but it was cool. It was neat doing it, and Kane was really impressed because it meticulously sculpted his burn scars into the piece, and he was impressed by that. He said nobody's ever done that before, and he liked the way it all
Okay.
looked, and worked with him. It didn't look unnatural to him.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Okay. Interesting. Well,
and he's what a wonderful guy Kane is. Kane is
dude.
again just amazing, salt of the earth is what
Yeah.
people say. So
I was gonna say, hopefully he didn't choke you over, not being able to get
oh
that
no,
shot the first night.
he's done that.
You.
He's punched me in the chest a couple of times. And, hey Jeff, how you doing? Punch. I'm like, oh great, Kane. Excuse me. He loves my fiance Maggie, though. Maggie interviewed him before she even met me when she was writing for a horror website back
Okay.
when she was in North Carolina, and then she met him while she was volunteering at the first Mad Monster party, and since
Oh,
then, I mean,
wow.
they've been he just loves Maggie. So
Beautiful.
yes, I'm so
Beautiful.
grateful for that. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
All right. Next up here, we have the Blob remake.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
another favorite of mine, and trying to kind of see some of your magic involved in this. What can you tell us about your work there?
Well, that again, it's really such an amazingly loved sequel. It's one of those people, or one of the
So
films that
good.
people say that it's a sequel that gets it right. And The Thing was the same
Yeah.
way, John Carpenter's version,
Oh yeah.
and but I had been corresponding with Jack Harris in 1978.
Mhm.
This is back when I was meeting all the guys from Equinox, and I found Jack's number. I found his office number, and I called him one day, and he talked to me. We ended up having a sort of a phone correspondence for a little while, but I told him in one of those calls, I said, one of my goals is to work on a film that you produced.
Mm.
And it was in 1988. I had just returned from Italy, working on Empire's Arena, and the Blob had already been in production, but Arena and the Blob both created this huge vacuum in the industry because of those two films. There's 50 people on Arena, 80 people on the Blob. I mean, and then there were some other shows going on at the time. There was just nobody could, I mean, or anybody, let's put it this way. If you or anybody wanted a job in one of those films, you could literally walk in off the street with no experience whatsoever and you'd get hired. That's how much help was needed on those shows.
Damn.
And a lot of people's careers started on those shows. Mike Elizalde
Wow.
started on Arena. I mean, now he runs
Wow, no
Spectral
kidding.
Motion. Yeah, that was Arena was his first movie.
Wow.
But on the Blob, I had come back from Italy and I had a couple of weeks off. I had money in the bank and bought a car, and I was just kind of like just taking a little time off from our 3 months, you know, eating great food and working day and night. But I decided to give him a call, and sure enough, I went down and talked to Lyle, and they hired me immediately, and I started up. And I was probably there for only about a month and a half, but I noticed a lot of the stuff that I worked on ended up in the show. But most of it was general lab stuff. They started me out in the animatronics department, stringing cables, and then I moved over to the mold department. And then Andy Workman and I built well, it's mostly Andy and me just assisting him, but building the sink for when the guy gets his head pulled down into the sink. And so that, yeah, the fake sink for that. And then there was, then they apparently, I did a little bit of sculpting here and there too, because it was just a blob. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows what a blob looks like?
Yeah.
But those guys were so incredibly picky about every little thing. It was just like amazing. It's like it's doing this in front of the camera. What are you pointing out like a drip that you don't like, you know? But it was cool. I mean, it was neat being a part of it. It was incredibly. I mean, the coordination. It's so weird because I don't know. Maybe it wasn't as coordinated as I felt it was at the time, but like I said, it all came together in such an amazing way that I mean, Chuck Russell. I mean, he's an outstanding director. I think. I mean, I really think he's. I mean, I don't know. He really never got as much credit. I mean, doing The Mask, I still think The Mask is a really, really well done film. And I'll be honest with you, this is directly to Chuck. I mean, I understand why you yelled at me on set. They had me set up for the scene where Ricky Paul Golden gets him and Erica Leniak are in the car, and he sticks his hand, he's groping her, and then her chest caves in, and Tony Ruprecht and I were in the back seat of the car, operating tentacles that pop out of the dummy. But for the scene where Ricky gets the blob in his face, that was literally, they had the car and a gimbal rig on its side. The car's on its side. He's harnessed in, and so he's on his side, much like I was originally, and literally me and somebody else dumped a 5-gallon bucket of slime over him for that. But Chuck wanted to see it beforehand, so they set up a couple of ladders and put a board between them and had me lie down on it, and they dumped 5 gallons of the Methacel all over me, and I laughed. I just said the absurdity of it. And Chuck got in my face and started screaming that I should be scared and I should be screaming and blah blah blah, and then he just goes, clean them up and do it again. So I had to do it a second time. Then I did the screaming, and I'm not a great actor, so I don't even know if my screaming was that enthusiastic, but it worked enough for him. We went in and did the shot, but I mean, I get it. I mean, he had so much pressure on him, and but in the end, I mean, yeah, it's really a well done
It's
film. I mean,
awesome.
it hits all the right points, and as 1980s films, I mean, really there's a style to them, and he really understood that. He produced a lot of good stuff. He was a really good producer. Also, he knew what needed to be done. So yeah, so I appreciate the chance of getting yelled at by him. So.
Oh man, I and just some of the effects that you mentioned, the bit of the reaching down and the blob, consuming her, and oh man, dude,
Oh
there's so
yeah,
many
yeah.
awesome, disgusting moments in that movie, and
Oh yeah.
a beautiful homage to the original. I mean, the original being great, but this coming out, I'm
Sure.
just like, God, dude,
I,
what a
I
fun take.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. My only disappointment was they never used the original theme in the film, and that's what should have been playing over the end credits.
Oh, okay,
That would have. I
okay,
mean, I still am not sure what was it, Brave New World or
uh-huh,
you
okay,
know
yeah.
the band Alien. I mean, I'm not sure how that really tied in with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, why not use, why couldn't they just gotten the original theme and use that? I think that audiences, I think, would have gone wild for that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't. That's great. I
yeah.
wonder if it was like a
That's
copyright thing or something like that.
well, I mean, Jack Harris. I mean, Jack Harris owns. I think he still owns a lot of that stuff. So
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if it was.
So,
I don't know if it was really that. I mean, maybe it would have been. Maybe it would have been difficult because they would have had to go through the estates of. Well, was Burt Bacharach still alive at that point? I don't know. Whoever was still alive, they would have had to go through their estates and this and that. So maybe that would have been an issue. But still, like I said, I mean, I think where's the fan cut with the Blob theme playing at the end credits? So
yeah, we could maybe make this happen.
there
There's
you
lots
go.
of cool labels out there, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
have that over top the end there.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. And they can send the checks to yeah. Actually, my
Whatever
friends.
estate.
Well, my friends call me Cash.
Okay,
So
okay.
yeah, no.
There you go.
Yeah,
Send it on to you.
yeah, exactly. So,
Last up here before we move on, I had to touch on a another love of mine when I was a little kid. We loved Jurassic Park, and then I fall upon this movie that I find in a blockbuster, Carnosaur, that
sure.
is a rated R, just over the top version of I'm looking for in a Jurassic Park stop motion, like you mentioned that your love. Take us back to working on that.
Well, I mean, Carnosaur has the advantage, though, of not only being the book was published about 10 years before Jurassic
Jurassic
Park.
Park. Yep.
We did a sidebar. We did meet Michael Crichton at John Buechler's during MMI because originally we were going to do Congo.
Oh, really?
Back in '87, Michael Crichton came through John Buechler's because Erwin Yablans, his brother Frank, had the property, and we were going to do Congo at John Buechler's shop originally for Empire.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, it seems kind of odd, but eventually Carnosaur is published. Roger Corman's given a copy of it before it's even published, and options it back in the 1980s, knowing that maybe he can do something with this eventually. And then when he hears about Jurassic Park, he goes, pulls out Carnosaur, dusts it off, and hands it over to Adam Simon. And lo and behold, we had it in theaters a week before Jurassic Park came out.
Man, oh
So,
man.
so we were the big dinosaur film at the moment
Uh-huh.
when it came out, and I'm really happy to have been involved in it. John called me up one night and said he wanted me on it. My roommate Rod Metsu was already working at John's, and John says, grab all of your reference material, and I had a sculpture I had already been working on. Really nice, lean Tyrannosaur making a stride, and it was really cool looking. The leg, I mean, it was a really powerful looking piece. And I walked in, and him and Rod had spent the night before through paper and and masking tape all over these Kane Hodder bodies. And I look at the shapes and I go, just to get basic shapes to start some sculptures over. And I was, oh boy. Well, I set my thing aside, and John, you know, it was Corman had his idea of what he wanted, and John had his idea of what he wanted, and I had my idea of what I wanted out of the Tyrannosaur. And you know something, eventually I just threw my hands in the air and I said, what the heck? I'll just do what they want, because that's, you know, working for them and they're paying the bills. And but it was cool. I mean, to be honest with you, to get to be involved in a dinosaur movie, for one thing, because I mean, grew up loving dinosaurs, and I think the film is really cool in a lot of ways because it explores all these interesting ideas. Diane Ladd being in it with her daughter being in Jurassic Park was another sort of casting coup. Um, and you know something, it was a neat experience because, again, having Mike Jones there working on the Deinonychus sculpture, and Mike is just an expert. He passed away a few years ago also, but I mean, just what an outstanding sculptor, and just, and he knew everything about dinosaurs too, and he would like point at my stuff and I'd say, yeah, you should probably fix this and that. Like, okay, great, you're right, I should. So, and I would, and made it, you know. But I think in a lot of ways, maybe I'm proud because I got to do maybe the last real dumpy dinosaur. I mean, dinosaurs, I mean, all Tyrannosaurus Rexes look alike now in movies.
Yeah.
They're just, the majority of them, just, they all look alike now because it's all just freeware that people use in most of their films. And it's just, and it all looks, again, to me, it looks mundane. It's like, it's cool and it's great to see it, you know. Everyone wants their realistic dinosaurs, but I mean, I'm still a big fan of Harryhausen and what he did and gave him, you know, I mean, they lacked the personality of some of his other characters, but they still had more personality than what we see these days. And be honest with you, I miss those days of having unique creatures, not just cookie cutter things. And I think that was one of the cool things about working on Carnosaur, because we had Don Glut as our basically consulting us on stuff, and he again is another outstanding expert when it comes down to things. But he also is a film guy, so doing that sort of crossover dinosaurs, you know, was really kind of a fun thing. But like I said, my T-Rex is very dumpy and stands up straight, and you know, it's very formal looking. You know, he kept strutting in, you know, into the shots. And then Ken Hall did this, you know, really outstanding full scale version, which in a lot of ways I like better than mine. But it was neat, just neat seeing all that stuff. And then I didn't get to go to set on any of this stuff, but let's put it this way: I was running the show, and at $100 a day, I was deemed too expensive. So instead of cutting my rate, they just said, "You're done with this. All right, later." You know.
Oh
so,
man, okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. But I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter about it because it was cool being involved in
sure,
it,
sure.
and something else always comes up. So.
You know, and I mean the depiction of, you know, seeing the dinosaurs that they were in some of the old school, you know, movies that I was growing up on and being introduced to as a kid, and seeing, you know, like the version of this versus Jurassic Park, and this kind of like take on some of the stop motion, or I mean, was there like forced perspective involved too?
Yeah. Well, it's a technique called it's forced perspective in a way, but it's called mixed scale. It's using different scaled item or objects in the same scene as say with a human, and you have to put it in front of the camera. So it is a perspective trick, but really apparently the more accurate term is from what I understand is mixed scale, and that was I mean, really brilliantly used in Darby O'Gill and the Little People, Peter Ellen
Oh
show.
yeah,
I mean,
sure.
devised some amazing shots in that. And going back to Equinox, that was the reason why Dennis Muren shot the Green Giant scenes. And I found out later that I was eating my lunches off those picnic tables and didn't even realize it. So, and on top of that, the guy who played the Doctor in Equinox, one of his earliest roles was as a leprechaun in Darby O'Gill and the Little People. So,
Oh wow, no, no
oh yeah,
kidding.
oh yeah. I mean, it's like Equinox has so many different little bits and pieces. Robin Christopher, Robin Snyder, originally her best friend was Stevie Nicks, and Robin was their vocal coach for a while after Equinox. So
Man, oh
yeah,
man,
so everyone
bits
knows
and
about
pieces
Frank.
everywhere.
Everyone knows about Frank Bonner, but
Yeah,
even someone like her had a career beyond, up on beyond that. But
man.
but yeah, like I said, and for as far as Carnosaur goes, it was really, I mean, it was a neat experience to get involved in something like that was a Gene Siskel liked. So
Uh-huh.
Roger Ebert didn't like it so much, but to see Gene Siskel gave it a thumbs up, which was kind of like an interesting juxtaposition. And then eventually, the cartoon, The Critic,
Okay.
the
Hmm.
Fox cartoon, The Critic,
Hmm.
John Lovitz, they did an episode with Siskel and Ebert, and of course they threw a couple of Carnosaur jokes into it. I'd never seen a cartoon depiction of my Carnosaur. They did a poster on the wall, and there it is.
There it is.
Some cartoonist version of my dumpy dinosaur.
I love it. And long live the dumpy dinosaur. Hopefully, there comes
Sure.
a project at some point here that you get to, rekindle that flame because, good Lord, I
Did
still to this day love those movies.
Barney the movie? He was the dumpiest of all dinosaurs. So
Oh my gosh! Oh my! From there, and not most recently, but a recent movie, I got to speak with Evan Marlowe in regarding to Abruptio and your
excuse
work,
me.
becoming involved in
Mm-hmm.
this. From the time lapse of how much that you put into this, when you get this material on your table, how are you starting? Where comes the planning of trying to figure out how in the hell are we going to pull this off?
A lot of it was pretty standard because I mean, making a puppet head is, I mean, by and large, it's pretty much the same through every technique. I mean, whether it's a creature or a human, or
Hmm.
so all the techniques are there, and I'd worked on enough of those things to be able to at least know the steps of what I needed to do, and at least I'm well versed enough to be doing them over the years to be able to like do those different tasks myself. I even had to make the eyeballs myself because I couldn't afford the quality eyeballs I wanted. So I used them on the first of the mother and the less puppets, the fourth seal eyes, and then by the time we came back around to shooting the stuff later, they were double the price and they weren't in my budget anymore. So I ended up just making eyes, bought all the materials and just made one eyeball at a time myself. But again, as far as that goes, it was just really a matter of Evan giving me descriptions of the characters because I've made this revelation a couple of times before, but I never read the script for Abruptio. I believe Danny Montoya did the same thing. We never read the script per se because I told them I felt bad for telling it was Evan or Carrie. They said we're going to send you the script. I said don't. I don't want to be rude, but I sort of wanted to keep it down to just the characters. I
Oh
just wanted
wow!
to understand the characters themselves, not the motivations, not the what they did or anything like that, because that was going to be part of the story anyways, but that didn't influence um, their visual design. That all came from either Evan giving me a basic description, sending me photos, maybe an actor he said I would like to have maybe some of this idea in the character. As far as Sid Haig's character, he really wanted to be a really large nose and sort of very decrepit looking, and the rest of it was just me. I mean, I had on average about a month per puppet. Of course, taking a few days off here and there just for my sanity. Do laundry also, maybe. But I would like sit down. I would only have about 2 days per sculpture, and then I'd have to. I mean, by the end of the first week, by day 7, I'd have all of my molds made, and then then if I had a second or third, sometimes I had up to 4 characters at once I was working on. So I would get to the process of getting my sculptures and molds made. Then I would start on the next character, the sculptures and the molds, and then I do the third character, the sculptures and the molds, so that was already a month right there, just doing all of those for 4 characters, and then all of the parts I would have to make, and all the little bits and pieces, and the teeth and the eyes, and the getting wigs sourced. I mean, they were just inexpensive, cheap synthetic wigs, but being the pandemic, getting that stuff was not as easy. I mean, some places were shut down. Buying supplies, luckily some of our suppliers were still open and still had the materials, so I was able to get what I needed. But I would sometimes have to say order a wig, and I wouldn't know exactly what I was going to get until I got it. And I'll tell anybody who wants to know how to make a synthetic wig look good, arid extra dry antiperspirant spray. The yellow can, the spray can with the 2 X's on it, that stuff is amazing for making a cheap wig look decent, because it's basically a fine powder, and you just spray it over, brush it through, and voila, it makes the wig look like suddenly looks more like real hair.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was one of the tricks I used, on it. And I think I even bought a can of it for Evan and Carrie, and said, here, anytime you need to, just here's what you do. Because I'll tell you, I had one great regret on that film, and that was not being there for them more. I mean, I would make these things and I'd be wiped out afterwards. They'd have like their shoots set up, and I'd be like, I can make these things, but I don't know if I can actually be there to shoot the stuff. But I should have been there to maintain the stuff just in case something happened. But I mean, it was a pretty hefty deal for me. I mean, I was running all the fiberglass myself, and I was doing all of those little tasks, and it seems easy, but the days would get long. I mean, I'd still put in a 10 or 12-hour day, like, sometimes 7 days a week for a couple of months, and then I'd take a few days off, or I'd get a day off in between, like in that period I have a 1 or 2 days off, and it'd be like sort of like, so one of the days I was running fiberglass, it was 117 degrees outside.
Holy man.
The day I ran it, and I have a tree, and I had to run it outside because I'm doing all this stuff in my living room, literally, because I can't go anywhere. I didn't have a shop at the time, and I was working out of Vincent Guastini's for a few of them, and I really appreciate his help on that. But once everything kind of got to a certain point, I just ended up building a little table here. I had a little setup here, and I just do these things out of my living room. And so if I did do any fiberglass, I'd have to take it outside, a little rolling table, take it outside, do it there. And one day it was like 117, and I had everything falling out of the tree from all the fumes and the heat and stuff. And look down, and I have a wolf spider crawling suddenly on my arm, and I'd be like, brush it off. And every little gnat and bug was flying around and getting embedded in the fiberglass. And I'm like, look, good thing nobody's ever going to see this. So, yeah, goodness. It's just never that easy. but like I said, when it came down to it, him and Carrie gave me not only the time that I needed to do it. The budget wasn't incredible, but at least they were understanding if I needed an overage on something, or they always were there, and they always never complained about it, and I just really thank them a lot because they're just great people, and they're really just some of the finest not only filmmakers but people that I know. So
Man, oh man.
yeah, so I'm really grateful
Yeah.
to them for that.
I mean, did you have, because I'm just trying to think from my simpleton mind in, these early conversations, like, did you have like a spreadsheet that you made or some sort of thing where it's like, okay, I
Oh
need
yeah.
45 puppets, I need 98 eyeballs, I need, like,
I
I mean, how does that look?
well, I started by doing one character for them. That was Les. They needed somebody to work on that, and then they needed a new version of Les, so I had to make a new sculpture and mold, and so that was one character, and then the mother character was the next one I did, and that was a singular character. And I think after those ones, oh, I did those babies also, the little babies also. But after that stuff, I noticed. I mean, I was working at Vincent Guastini's and Ken Hall's and stuff like that, but I'd say that they were continuing to shoot, and they had a different puppet, and they had somebody else making puppets for them, and I thought, well, I guess maybe that's I guess maybe they finished with me, or maybe they didn't like me, or they didn't care what I did, or this or that. But I didn't think too deeply into it. I mean, it's their prerogative, and they were doing their thing, and I liked what they were getting too. I mean, it was interesting because they were different from mine, but they looked interesting, and they kind of Mark had one way he was doing it, and then my first one, Mother, had very sort of not realistic, but it was a little more structured than the later ones that I did. And then when I saw the puppets they were getting from the other, Alicia Berry and I think somebody else did, and maybe a shop or something did, maybe one or a couple other puppets, and um, I saw the direction they were going. So when Evan and Carrie brought me back, um, I kind of felt freed up to be able to now explore different areas, and that became sort of, since I already had an idea of what I needed to do, I sat down with a calendar and I wrote day one, da da da, day two, get this done, day three, get this done, and that was so. By the end of the month, I had all my tasks written out. So every puppet I did, I pull out the calendar, day one. All right, get this done. Day two, and that was pretty much how I did it. It was more a calendar than a spreadsheet,
Okay.
but honestly, I didn't even know how many characters they were going to give me. I knew that at some point they needed a lot of characters, and I kind of was talking and say, listen, we should get these done, and you guys should really try to find the money. Just get me going and get some people in. We can get them all done, and that way you have them. But it
Yeah.
just never worked out that way. And like I said, it was really, I mean, I was surprised. I was working on something it was an airport. And I was actually doing it for somebody else, and they had to let their shop go under, which left this job unfinished, and it
Mm.
looked like it was going to fall into my lap. And working with an airport is so different than working with a film project, because not only is it a state government thing, then you've also got, like, you send them off one thing for approval, and you don't get an approval for 2 months because it goes through like in lines of people. Every single person has to put their 2 cents worth in. So it's like
Mm.
I wouldn't get an idea of anything for months. I had no idea. This project just dragged out and out and out to the point where when it finally was ready, the pandemic hit, and the whole thing it was supposed to be for an airport. And then suddenly nobody's going to airports, so guess what? There goes that project. But they didn't want to. I wanted to renegotiate. Now we're back.
Oh man, that's never happened. I got a damn phone call and it wanted to delete everything.
Well, something. It's like it's that is a timing thing for me. It's always the perfect time when I'm on. So
I
it happens.
apologize.
It
I
happens. I was like,
apologize.
I don't even remember where I was at, but the truth is, I was riffing anyway. So.
We were mentioning as far as uh, a job within an airport and
Oh,
how
that
kind of in
sure.
between.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll try to finish that up and hopefully not backtrack too much. But again, this job did not want to. They did not want to renegotiate a price. They said, "This is how much is left. We want to do it for that." And I said, "Listen, I have nothing to do. I had nothing to do with your contract to begin with." I said, "Listen, I was the guy. I'm the guy making it, but I'm not the guy who made the deal." And I said, it wasn't about like trying to screw them or anything. But I said, "Listen, my personal feeling is just you guys, there was never enough to begin with, and this job drug on for so long that you guys wasted so much time and money on this thing that we could have just had this thing done a long time ago and saved you guys so much." But they said, "Nope, this is what we want." And I said, well, I'll think about it. And then Evan sent me an email saying, "Hey, we're going back in production, and you interested in joining back up?" And I wrote the airport and emailed them back and said, "Yep, I just got something else." I said, "I'm already
Sayonara.
well, pretty much I was already contractually obligated to Abruptio to begin with anyways. So because we had already signed contracts on it and this and that. So in reality, I had an obligation to them and not the airport because, I mean, again, they just didn't, I mean, listen, it's like you're just going to treat people as if they're just cogs. I mean, don't expect every cog to fit. So,
Well, and
yeah.
luckily it ended up working out, where you
Oh,
ended up
yeah.
working on Abruptio, because man, what a cool, task. And I mean, time consuming, obviously, as far as just hearing the amount of years that went into the
Yeah.
development and the creation and the shooting, and just when you went into creating characters. Oh, what was that? Sorry.
So ironically, I was just getting a phone call. I just had to. Luckily, it didn't kick us off,
Oy, oy,
but
oy.
you know,
It's a
hey,
day
I got
for
news for
us.
you, people. Don't bother us. We're talking. Uh, Bother us later. Um, but no, but again, it was such a lucky break that they contacted me, and I had no idea it was going to be so many characters. I mean, I can't even count the characters I did for Abruptia. I don't know if there's there was very few shots in that film my work doesn't appear in. I mean, it's wild to
Sure.
see that. Like, I never thought that I would ever work on anything that populated a film. And I've worked on a ton of films, but never ever done anything where I actually populated the film with
Sure.
characters.
Okay.
And then to have, I mean, Danny Monteith puppeteering was just, I mean, an outstanding stroke of luck also because it's so intuitive and 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 every time it was great too because it was very collaborative in a lot of ways because they would suggest things and I'd go, it's going to take a lot more work for me to do, but I do it and they would be happy about it. So
Sure. Sure.
okay, let me get rid of this notification. There we go.
I was going to ask that too in development, as far as creating these, were there certain ones that you had to go back and it's like, oh, well, their eyebrows are supposed to raise and move, or they are going to have something a little bit different that they're going to do, and you had to kind of restructure, or, I mean,
Actually, well, in a little way, yeah, but it was luckily I was still early enough into the process where it wasn't really a big deal.
okay.
The only problem was I just didn't have the on. I don't even know how apparent it is on Dunkov. His character, his left eye, the droopy eye, actually would roll up. I built a little toggle there at the spring thing that Danny could go in and he could roll the eye up. There's something that Evan asked for, and then Danny also. There was a shot where his eyes are very droopy, and then Evan wanted a shot where the eyes widen up. I think
Okay.
before his head explodes or something. And unfortunately, I built it, and it was working. I sent him video of it, and I mean, I was just at a point where just so many hours put on these things. I did something and screwed it up, and the eye wouldn't blink anymore. You could actually raised the lid too. But it wasn't working the way I wanted. I was really disappointed and I feel very apologetic to Evan, but he was okay with it really in a lot of ways. But I thought this is great because I get to do some little extra with this, and then I I messed up. I just couldn't build it sturdy enough, really, because at that point I did have some issues with I got to fit a hand in there, and I can't put an E-bar that will strengthen it, and I got to come in with something that'll, it was a little more gingerly built than I would have hoped, and again, another problem was the materials, just getting the supplies. I mean, just finding a piece of the tubing that I needed, the right size of brass tubing, at that point was difficult because nobody had it. And I was able to find a piece, but still, it was like the very last minute, and I then sort of had to fudge it together. But again, yeah, in a way, yeah, but for the most part, that was something that they really asked against. The original Les puppet did have an animatronic, did have radio-controlled blinking eyes, and I think his eyes moved also. But Evan didn't want that. He wanted more of a blank stare, and he said, if anything happens, we'll do that in post with the blinks and stuff like that. And I was fine with that,
Yeah.
Anything less that I have to build, especially on the time frame when every single day I did have a task to do, and that would have just added to that and increased it.
And sometimes some of those, shortcomings, kind of create those happy accidents where it's like, not initially what I was thinking, but look at this thing. It's like, well, we work with what we got here.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been cool to build little cable-controlled lips and things like that. But again, that adds time and because every single head was unique, I didn't start with like a blank form that I would work from. Every sculpture was unique, and that meant that the molds and even down to the understructures were all unique to that character. They weren't. Because sometimes I've worked on things where you'll have just sort of a generic form to work over, and then you sculpt over that, but that makes it difficult in terms of creating character sometimes. So in this case, it was done traditionally where you start with the sculpture and then backtrack everything from there down to the underskull. So, and then the underskulls aren't always even. They're not always perfectly smooth and even. There's one side's a little more off than the other. Like people. They're, they're not perfectly
unique.
symmetrical. Exactly. Excuse me. But they, that made a challenge to build things like the jaws and things like that. I wanted to put floating jaws, literally, just so that it would kind of float in there and you could move it around a lot. But they said, no, we want hinges. And hinges are a little more time, but I knew how I could make them with off-the-shelf things. It's just that, again, being unique, every time I'd have to tweak the jaw a little bit for each single one so they would actually move properly. And so it's just little things like that. Nothing impossible, but even my lizard brain could wrap around them. So. Believe me, I know guys who are just so good at building this stuff. I mean, it's amazing how good people are. So,
but, having something like that project, and especially something, for 2024 in today's day and age, the attention to detail, the very intricate work that went into all of this. I mean, as soon as it came on my radar, I was so excited. I hadn't even seen the movie yet. Yeah. I reached out to Evan. And then I watched the movie and I'm like, thank God. I mean, it's absolutely awesome. And I just, any aspect that I could hear as far as behind the scenes and creating something like this was just awesome.
Having not read the script, I mean, I knew generally how the film was going. I knew kind of the idea behind it, and I knew some of the things because he would send me a script page for a character or something, so I'd have a little idea of some things, but I had no idea how the film all wrapped up, how everything tied together, and I didn't see it until it had already, I think it had already played its first festival screening, and they had a little Evan and Carrie. We still here?
Got you.
There you are. And we And that was the first time I saw it. It had already been finished. And matter of fact, the first time I saw it, it's a little different than the version that Anchor Bay put out. I won't say what it is, but the thing that happens at the end of the Anchor Bay version doesn't happen till the very end of the end credits in the version I saw. So you're kind of seeing this
Oh,
whole thing play out the credits, and then the last frame of the end credits. That's when you see how it all.
mm-hmm.
And it was, to me, it was really powerful. But I think it might have been too subtle for a
Okay.
lot of people to
Okay.
notice if they'd watch it all the way through. Most people, some people don't even watch credits
Yeah.
these days. But you know, it was really powerful as far as I was concerned. And I really loved it. I was just so floored by working on something that had not only some meaning, but also just really such an odd idea and how they actually pulled it together. And I'm thinking about the music score too. I mean,
Mm.
just really like when that first like bit the music pops up, and it's just like so disorienting and but amazing too. Um, I'm just, like I said, I'm really, really proud of working on that one. And I mean, I'm happy to have worked on a lot of stuff, but we don't always. I mean, things don't always work out the way that you want. But that doesn't mean that those who are making the films didn't put in a ton of effort, and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
put in, everything that they had. I mean, everybody deserves, some kudos for what they do. So, even if I seem negative at times, I do understand that it's never as easy as it
Yeah.
seems. And
Yeah.
despite the outcome, what got put into it was greater than what was gotten out of it. But the effort was worth it still. So
And having something that's highlighted, kind of like you mentioned, throughout the whole project, and having it be, main characters, and
yeah.
I'm sure it's always a delight looking back on and be like, oh, well, I got kind of the main spotlight on something like this.
Yeah, I got really lucky with that one. It was like I told Evan and Carrie. I said this was like a gift. I mean, guys like me rarely ever get a gift like this.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I'm really proud of this one, especially to come so late in my career. Because honestly, I'll be brutally honest. I just don't know where I'm going after that. I'm sort of moving, like I said, like I mentioned, I've moving into fine art and doing things like that because I just find it so much more personally satisfying than what I'm doing in film these days. Again, not because the efforts of others are not as great as they should be. It's just that it's difficult to feel the emotional connection out of some of the things.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times, because we're just rushed through it so much these days. I remember days when, a low budget movie was a 20 or 30-day shoot, and now we're shooting them in 4 days, and that's when I was producing short films. I mean, we'd shoot some of them in an evening, but we would tailor them to what we could do. We didn't try to overdo it. I think it's a lot of the problem sometimes is the concepts are bigger than what the film is capable of
Idea.
at the
Yeah. Yeah.
time. So, my idea is start with what you can do and then build up from there, and don't try to throw everything in the kitchen sink and you only end up with the kitchen sink. So. But like I said, I really shouldn't. I mean, honestly, in my personal opinion, even if it's not something that's my cup of tea, the filmmakers really shouldn't. They shouldn't like. Well, it's my opinion means
Yeah.
nothing when it comes down to that. But really, I mean, they deserve it too
Mm.
because you never know. One day I'd like to see more Sergio Leone's and David Lean's and I'm not sure some filmmakers these days the britches are a little bigger than they can fill. So yeah.
I mean, and you mentioned within fine art, and in an interview, I had heard you mention something along the lines of that you felt like one of life's main purposes are goals, and kind of reinvigorating this interest in art and doing a 2D painting of Godzilla. Has this been a long, interest of yours as far as even early on within painting, and how does that light reignite for you?
Well, I painted when I was earlier, and I don't think anything was any good. I believe that even when I was in elementary school, I think it was probably when I was in sixth grade. We'd just moved to Glendale, but our school had it was a national art contest throughout the United States, and some of every school would have certain pieces picked, and they would be on display in it was a National Art Gallery or something like that. And I think I think the piece that I did was picked. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think it was. And I thought it was really cool, but it didn't really spur that in me. And I had done some canvas stuff, and I thought, I mean, it never really grabbed me. Although I loved the famous Monsters covers, Basil Gogos and Ken Kelly, and I really, believe me, admire fine artists throughout history. I just never really thought that it would be something I'd really be able to accomplish. And getting into the film industry, mostly a lot of it, I never really got a chance to do much like that in there. And I think I felt intimidated a little bit because there's so many good people, and I was good at the things I was doing, but I really didn't want to go into that area. But like I said, it was, I think, just frustration eventually. And this was like years and years ago, maybe 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 years ago now. I had some time off, and I had a canvas, and I said, something, I'm just going to do something, and I just want to give it a try. And I did this Godzilla piece, and it turned out decent. I was really pleased with it. I worked it a couple of times before I was happy with it, but I liked it using acrylics because I use so many chemicals doing this. I'm sticking with acrylics at this point. Maybe I'll do some oils or something eventually, but I just don't want to work with a lot of chemical-based stuff these days. Just getting body-wise, it just gets really rough dealing with that.
Sure.
And people don't want to hire me as a sculptor. They'll hire me as a sculptor and a mold maker and a this and a that and a that. If anything, I want to just stick with one thing these days and be focused. Somebody wrote that I want to be more deliberate and more focused, and I like that idea. So after the Godzilla, I think I did a Cyclops, a 7th Voyage Cyclops, and it was looking terrible. I set aside, and then I finally got it worked out till I liked it, and then I did the third one I did was a Taurus from Equinox, and that wasn't working for me at all. So I set aside, but the fourth one, I don't remember what the fourth one was, but it started clicking, and I just would do one after another. And I did a Kong, sort of a go-go style Kong that ended up in a King Kong art show at Creature Features when it was still open years ago. And again, I was working on the piece, and I thought, I wonder if there's anything I've thrown in. Kong art show. It's like perfect. So I put it in, and it was great. And so at least people got to see it and say that they liked it a lot. And but for me, again, now it's because I work so much alone on my own, and waiting around for someone to call you for a job is, these days especially, I mean, there were years when I was getting like call after call after call. These days I'm getting calls, and I'm having to turn down some of the stuff. I mean, I turned down Slaughterhouse.
Oh, really?
Which I in a way, I kind of, I regret it a bit because I haven't seen it. Maggie saw it, and she enjoyed it. And I thought the script was okay, actually, but they were in such a sort of a mess at the point when they contacted me. They had already gotten bids from other shops, but they had waited for one bid for a month, and it put them behind, and they were going to lose their money if they didn't get in production by a certain point. So they had to kind of accelerate everything. And it was weird because I had gotten a referral because a line producer I had worked with highly recommended me and said, give this guy a call, because they had already gotten bids from some very well-known shops. And they called me, and the line producer calls me, and I said, "Why are you calling me?" I said, "You've already got some great bids here, and every single one of these shops is capable of doing the job, and I'm not sure why you're talking to me, but really the reason." Well, he said, "Well, we really need people who think out of the box, and we're looking for somebody who's blah blah blah." And really, what they're saying is, we want somebody cheaper.
Okay.
And we for days we talked, and I finally gave him a bid, but I couldn't come. My first bid, I just couldn't come in any lower than what another one of the shops came in. I think I came in like $1,000 less because everything they wanted everything, and they wanted it all
Lease
had
them
to be
out.
done through. Yeah, they wanted and it had to be done through one shop. They didn't want to break things up like this side handling the puppet and the other side doing all the gore effects. They wanted all of that done under one roof, so that
Mm.
added to the workload and the money, and then putting it all together as quickly as they needed it. I just wasn't in the mood for that. I just come off of, I mean, a few months before I just finished up that stint on Abruptio, and I was still a bit wiped out from it. And I just, I gave them a bid and let it go at that. And they ended up hiring creature effects for it, and they did a fine job for it. So all is good. It
Yeah,
all works
sure.
out in the end, the job would have been nice, but I realized at that point it's just not as exciting to me to
Okay.
take on these things and try to rush through them. And um, I want a more quiet life at this point. I'm a man who enjoys his privacy,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a matter of just now focusing on something, and I find that painting does that for me. It gives me the ability to sit down and concentrate on something without having a lot of outside forces trying to get me to think about something else.
Hmm.
So I did, all these pieces, and this War of the Colossal Beast piece has now ended up on Scary Monsters magazine, and I'd like to do a little bit more like that. And I've got a bunch more pieces tons of stuff that I've worked on now that is sitting around, and if anybody wants to hang something, they can contact me.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, so
Oh,
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
And I mean, do you find yourself, I mean, I love that you mentioned, the work in inspiration from painting, monsters and different things like that. Do you find yourself kind of driven of certain elements to paint or certain things that you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can do that.
Oh
And
yeah.
maybe those parts are the ones that are like, you know what, let's try a Cyclops and see how this turns out.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's about challenge.
Yeah.
Really, it is about a challenge of the goal is trying to meet it,
Mm.
and if you don't, something, you can always set it aside if
Hmm.
it's not
Come
working
back
for
to
you,
it.
and then may come back to it. I had one piece I completely abandoned. I did a different version. I started it from scratch and did a different version of it. Liked it even better, and then I used the original one and covered it. I just gessoed it out, and I did another thing over that, and um, so, but yeah. So it's believe me, if I don't know how to do it, I'll figure it out.
And I
Or there's
love
always a
that.
way. Listen, I mean, you can always go to reference material. There's books. I mean, Basil Gogos used to carry an anatomy book with him
Mm.
everywhere he went.
Hmm.
So even professionals still like to have that support.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, sure.
it's not everything comes directly out of your head.
Hmm.
It's really, I mean, although in a lot of ways I do enjoy doing it out of my head more
But a
than really.
reference helps.
A reference always helps.
Sure,
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
exactly.
incredible. And so you
Yeah.
have pieces for sale as far as do you have a shop put up or anything like that? Or how
I,
would they just get a hold of you on here
well,
maybe?
you could find me through, I mean, there's my website,
Hmm.
jefffarleyfineart.com.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, you can always send me a message if you want to. I mean, it's really, I'm not so big that somebody can just write to me and say, hey, I'm interested. I mean, I charge for my pieces, but I can be a little flexible.
Sure.
I mean, the Sven Gooley piece that I did that ended up on his show in 2023. I mean, that was, I even did that for a slight discount. I charge a certain amount per canvas, and but I had been wanting to do one of him for a while anyway, and someone was going to have me do was going to have me. They had a couple of ideas, and they said, but would like to think a little bit before I make a final decision. The next day, they went, scratch those. I want Sven Gulli, and I went, great. And it turned out to really be. It's one of my favorite pieces. It's
Awesome.
really because everything came out from the image of him, and then everything after that was an afterthought, just added into the image because it was appropriate. The castle on the hill, and the Berwyn. There's a little hint of Berwyn, but you can't see the whole thing. And
Sure.
just those little things, a graveyard, and all that sort of thing. But that's what excites me now. It's because it's almost like sculpting in 2 dimensions, trying to create a dimensional look with just a flat image, and I'm not the first one to do that, but I love doing that because I find it so personally satisfying now because it's something that it came from something that inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why I paint, is because since I've been in the industry for so long. I've been in the film industry now for almost 50 years now. and I'm just, it boggles my mind when I think that, but painting now is a way for me to recall the things that inspired me. I mean, I can go back to any famous monsters and get an image that I can duplicate, and because those are the things that I was looking at as a kid. And I never read the magazines as much as I'd read them once, and then I'd look at the images over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So so that's really what inspires me, and
having the shop, people can pick up a copy of or an original version of their own, and
I do prints also. I will do prints. So I do some prints, and those are less expensive, and nothing's horribly expensive, but the truth is it's
work.
You gotta buy
busting your butt.
Gotta buy groceries and pay the rent, and it's I mean, if I could sit and do this in a field, maybe I could let's do some plein air eventually.
But, and it's an incredible thing. Your craft is absolutely incredible, and your time today, Jeff. This has been so awesome. I can't thank you enough for the inquisiting mind of myself and many others, but looking at your work, and even your work today with fine art. Somebody can buy something to have up on their wall there, from a hand like yours. So I want to say thank you very much, Jeff. This has been incredible.
Thank you, Eric. I really do appreciate it very much, and it's really great speaking with you. And we'll do it again.
Absolutely. We sure will. All right. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.